This is a May Luna Media production. You're listening to Love, Light, and Black Holes. I'm your host, Morgan Garza, here to remind you of your disco ball soul so you can dance with your darkness. If you're sick of love and light spirituality like I was, you're in the right place. We keep it real, go deep, and give voice to your shadow so your light shines even brighter. Enter the void. Welcome back, shadow sparklers and shame slayers. What if I told you there's a part of you that's been quietly sabotaging your relationships, your career, your happiness, your money, and you have no idea it exists? By now, you know that this podcast is all about shadow work and the messy, magical middle of being a human, the whole spectrum. But shadow work is the core because it is literally the key to getting and being and becoming everything that you've ever wanted. And I have centered my entire career and podcast and upcoming book around this topic because I have experienced it firsthand, because I know what going into the darkness can produce, can provide, can create. So rather than fear the darkness and step away from it and stay in the middle of having nothing, doing nothing, and being continuously frustrated, I have decided to encourage you and to make it my mission on this earth to get everyone, as many people as possible, to do and fall in love with shadow work. When this really changed for me, if you've been listening to this podcast, then you know, I survived a terrorist attack in India in 2008. I didn't touch this trauma for a decade until I had a full mental breakdown and realized all of the ways that I had been avoiding and numbing and creating a different story in my head about how I actually felt about what happened, and that it wasn't that big of a deal, even though obviously it was. I was really disassociating from the situation. So at the 10-year anniversary, when I had a full blown out breakdown, I realized that it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be to actually go into the darkness, to actually look at this. And that really changed everything for me. And then the next point that shadow work absolutely exploded open was when I heard the phrase, shame is the shadow of desire. And there's an entire podcast on this. Scroll back into the beginning of this, I would say season, but I don't think this is a season what this podcast is doing. I honestly don't know what it's doing. It's just living. Scroll back to the beginning. Listen to this shame is the shadow of desire. And that was really the key that unlocked an entire mansion of potential and possibilities, because what I realized was quietly sabotaging my relationships, my career, my finances, and my happiness was avoidance. It was shame. And most people spend their entire lives running from this shame, from the trauma, from guilt, from the darkness in general. And I'm going to show you why in today's episode. Running towards it is the fastest way to freedom. And we hear the quote all the time, the only way out is through. And that is exactly what shadow work is. It wants to get you out by moving you through what has you frozen and congealed and solidified and attached and totally shaking with fright and terror and panic. And this is not the way. The problem is that your life keeps repeating. It keeps going in these cycles, the same arguments, a different partner, the same career block, a different job, the same income ceiling no matter what you do. The same feeling of not enough in a different circumstance. You've done the affirmations that feel empty. You've set the intentions. You've worked on your mindset. So why does this keep happening? Why does this cycle, this pattern, this situation come back around again and again and again? Why does it keep repeating? Because you're trying to fix the visible problem while ignoring invisible wound driving it. The invisible wound driving it is deeply encoded into your subconscious. It has become part of what you exist in without even really knowing it. And this started at birth. Your deepest, darkest, most prolific shadow that has its tentacles and its tendrils in absolutely every single part of your life, you were born with. So much happens in nurture in the home after we're born versus nature. We have the parents that we choose, their circumstances, our siblings, our family, our health, our parents' health, our living situation. There are so many things that we come into life inherently with that are really out of our control. They are our circumstance, our environment, and our experience. However, there's something else that we come into life with that is encoded within us. And it's not like there's no free will, and it's not like there's this destiny that we're just going through the motions and following the path and eventually ending up in this place that we would have inevitably ended up in no matter what we did during life, no matter what choices we made. That's not this. This is an opportunity. And what I'm talking about is your astrology. When we're born, there is a snapshot, a fingerprint in time taken of exactly where the stars are in our universe, in our galaxy, and in our solar system. And at that point, we are given a natal chart, sometimes also called a birth chart in astrology. And this is where you can learn of your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign. But there are also so many other things and aspects and layers, like an onion, that you can get into that give you insight about who you are, about what your hangups are, about what your personality is going to be like, about the challenges that you have chosen, because I truly believe that we choose before we come back into this life, before we reincarnate, the challenges that we are going to encounter. And this could be down to the specifics of when or if we'll marry, if we have children, what our work will be and what kind of vocation we go into, the family dynamics that we have. This is all in your natal chart, in your birth chart in astrology. And it is the most in-depth. People spend their literal entire lives studying astrology because there are so many different aspects to it, so many different layers. But where we can really start seeing the shadow, because while you're trying to fix this problem, you're just like scratching the surface of what's actually going on. You're putting Band-Aid on a festering wound and not actually tending to the wound itself. Through astrology, you understand what you were born with. And this is in your Chiron placement. Chiron is an asteroid. It has been orbiting our solar system for who knows how long, many, many moons. And it is the wounded healer. And through this asteroid, we understand what it is that we came into this life to experience and be wounded by, and then turn that around, turn it into gold, let the gold fill all of those cracks that we have felt broken with through this wound, and use it as medicine. That is why Chiron is the wounded healer, because its wounds are then turned around to help others. What we move through, what we experience, what we go through in life all becomes something that we can help others with. We become proficient in this one little tiny sliver of experience of life, and then that turns into something that we can share out with others. And we all have this. We all have this opportunity to see what Chiron can give back to us and what wounds we can heal in order to help heal others. And having a shadow in general is not a flaw. It's a part of being human. There's no getting around it. And I've talked about this so much, but if you're just tuning into this podcast now and this is the first episode you're ever hearing, hi, hello, this is all about shadow work. And you are just in as need of your shadow as you are in your light. And so many people don't understand that we are half. We are half light, we are half dark, just like the yin yang symbol, just like night and day. And sometimes just as the sun is longer in the summer, the days are longer in the summer and shorter in the winter, we have periods that our darkness overtakes and our light comes back. And then they play this dance that is literally dancing with your darkness. Sometimes it's really prominent, sometimes it's not at all, and you're living in the light and you're loving life. But darkness and the shadow is a part of being a human. There is no escaping it. There's no getting around it. There's no you without your shadow, just like there's no you without your ego. And the cost of ignoring it is years of therapy that scratches the surface, self-help that doesn't stick, and repeating cycles that make you feel crazy. So this revelation on what shadow work actually is and how it is already encoded into your life is massive. This is a huge way for you to skip the guessing, to cut out the affirmations that are baseless and bullshit, to stop going in circles and talk therapy and never really getting anywhere, even after a long, long time. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to therapy. I have benefited a lot from therapy. But there was also a point in time where I was like, this isn't doing anything for me anymore. And I'm just circling the same shit and I'm saying the same shit and she's saying the same shit back to me. And like, I'm not getting anywhere. I need to go deeper. I need to get to the root. I need to actually be with myself in a way that isn't this modality. And so, yes, please go to therapy. I'm never going to tell you not to. But there's so much more that can help you understand yourself. And that is in your Chiron placement. And if you are just like dying to know what this is, the big reveal is that I have created something. I've been spending months on this. I have created a free report. You can it's linked down in the show notes. You can go grab it right now. That tells you where your Chiron placement is, the sign in the house, and what that means in terms of your shadow. So it literally delivers your shadow to you. I have people tell me that they have started crying. They broke it down in tears. They finally feel understood. They feel like a great weight has lifted off their chest, that it's like way too accurate, that they feel called the fuck out. But this is magic. So if you are dying to know, press pause, go do your report right now, grab the link, go through. It's super fast, super easy. All you need is your birth information, and it's going to give you all of what your shadow is and the depths of it. But your Chiron sign and house shows you exactly where the wound lives. It's actually eerily accurate, because you are going to be meeting the part of you that's been in the driver's seat without your permission. And it's not like we come into this world, we all have a Chiron placement, and we, get taken away by it. We're not like being kidnapped by Chiron. We are unconsciously playing out what Chiron started. And because we don't know, because we aren't, most people given our birth chart when we are little and told these are all the things that you need to look out for, we create all of these validating experiences around that initial Chiron wound when we were born. And then, of course, you move through life and you have all other kinds of trauma and shadows and things that come in. But this is the core. This is the foundation of all of the shadows that you are going to build up on through life, because there's no escaping shadows. Like, this isn't the only wound you're going to have. So don't think that this solves everything, but it is going to tell you what has been most prominent, most prolific, most long lasting in your life in terms of your shadow. And it's tough love. It's uncomfortable. It's the thing that you've been avoiding looking at, and it's the most liberating thing you'll ever do. So many people avoid shadow work because they're afraid of what they'll find, and they don't know where to start. And so there are so many barriers to entry. There are so many things that people feel like they can't quite get there. They don't know where to start. They're afraid of what they'll find. They don't know how to handle it once they do find it. And what if it wrecks them? What if they discover something about themselves that is so awful, so humiliating, so quote unquote unlovable, that everything just shatters and breaks down? And like, that literally never happens. And if it does, if you do discover something that you have repressed, there's therapy for that. And there are different ways to move through that kind of realization and that kind of pain. But what you're going to discover with your Chiron placement is truly what you have been unable to name, but have seen the pattern throughout your entire life. And it's really, really fucking wild when you actually look at it, because you realize, like, I'm not broken. I'm not crazy. There isn't something wrong with me. This has just been playing out. This is the story that has been playing in the background of my life and attracting all of these circumstances and people and relationships and on and on and on that fit this story. And when you understand it, that is when liberation happens, because the hardest part of shadow work, the thing that people tell me unequivocally with the thousands of people that I've helped through shadow work experiences, they tell me I don't know where to start. How do I start doing shadow work? They don't know where to look. And you can't work on what you can't see. This first step of awareness is massively important. That's why people spin their wheels in therapy for years, because they're scratching the surface. They're noticing all of these patterns, but there's nothing to help them really dive in to the core of it, to the root, to the reason why. So this is working with your Chiron as shadow work done for you, the discovery part at least, because your Chiron placement is your deepest wound and that is your shadow's home base. And this report gives you the diagnosis. It tells you what and why, because that is what we spin our wheels wondering. How do I start shadow work? How do I know what I need to work on? Why do I see all of these patterns playing out in my life and I keep attracting the same kinds of shit that I really don't want? And when I first realized what my Chiron pattern was playing out, I was like, holy shit. Obviously, like it read me like a T, like my entire childhood, not so much anymore because I've worked through a lot of it unknowing from what my Chiron placement was many years ago, but just from growth and expansion and honestly giving way fewer fucks about what people think, because mine was very heavy in keeping the peace and not using my voice and being misunderstood and being stepped on in my home in terms of expression and acceptance and just who I was. And so I grew up thinking that I was really shy and I was quiet and I was timid and I just wanted to be in the background and I don't want any spotlight on me and I'm just going to exist back here, but I'm not going to make any waves. I'm not going to stir the pot. I'm just going to be the good girl. And I realized that I was doing that because my sister was the opposite. She was awful to me. First of all, we worked through this. Like, we're fine now. We're great. We're close. But my whole family talks about it. She was awful. She did not want me to live. Everything I did was stupid. She put everything down. I went through my young years thinking that I was terrible. And then I would go to school and have a completely opposite experience. I was popular. I made friends easily. I was outgoing. I was talkative. I was really smart. I did great in school. And then I would come home and it's like I had a different persona. I had to take on this alter ego to exist around the enormity of my sister's displeasure in me, in herself, in life. And it was really difficult. And it took me decades to name and unravel this. And once I got through it and really moved into my 20s and started reclaiming my voice and understanding from my point of view why she would treat me the way that she did, when I would literally beg my parents to have another kid as my birthday gift. Like, I didn't ask for anything. All I wanted was someone to love. I had so much love to give. I had this abundance overflowing in me, and I couldn't put it towards her. So then I also grew up with this massive sisterhood wound and saw other women as competition and as something that couldn't be trusted, in this relationship that was never really real, which was also perpetuated and influenced by society and media and culture, because that is what we saw in the 90s in female relationships on the screen. And so I was coming at this from so many different parts, but when I finally let all of that go and moved into myself and realized I do want relationships like this, and if I can't have that relationship with my sister, then I'm going to cultivate that with many other women in my life who have become my sisters and who give back to me what I give to them and what I've always craved. But I didn't understand that this was my core wound until I looked at my Chiron. And then it was like all of the lights in the room came on, and all of these points of light that were seemingly disconnected were all suddenly connected, and everything is now making sense. And I can see how prolific this became in my life, and how I held my voice, and how I was afraid to talk, and how I thought that I was shy and that was just who I was. And when I really came into myself and allowed myself to come through with authenticity, that is when I started like spontaneously healing all of these bits of me that felt so wounded and abandoned and misunderstood, and like I just wanted to scream from the rooftops, and I would be speaking a different language. Like, that's how I felt as a kid. And now that I'm grown and moving through all of the things and doing a massive amounts of shadow work, I have realized that that wound has given me so much wisdom and so much empathy and so much softness and compassion that I have now put that back into the work that I do, the relationships that I have. And I am hyper aware when people don't stand up for themselves, when they don't use their voices, when they don't advocate for themselves, when they're passive to just keep the peace, and when they want to not stir the pot, but they have some pot stirring shit. And it is so frustrating to me because I see myself in them, and I see all of the ways that I dimmed my light to make someone else more comfortable. And that is not what I'm here to do anymore. So seeing this right in front of your eyes is like having a map instead of wandering in the dark, hoping you stumble on the thing that's been haunting you. And it is the most mind-blowing experience to feel understood by yourself, because that is all we want. This is why we love astrology. This is why we loved the Cosmopolitan quizzes in the magazines when we were teenagers. This is why we love all the BuzzFeed quizzes, because they tell us about ourselves. We want to learn about ourselves, and astrology is having a massive moment. Really, for the past 10 to 15 years, it has been super mainstream because it gives us an insight into ourselves. And to take that even deeper, when you add shadow work with that, then you are seeing yourself in a way that you have never been able to, that was never available to, that wasn't even possible before this came, quote unquote, on the scene. So when you do this report that I've created, that I've spent months tinkering with and perfecting and testing and doing all of the things, it's so dope. It's so dope. It's something that you don't want to look at. Like, I get it. I know that shadow work isn't something that you want to do. I know we're not all waking up, except for me, like, hey, I'm going to tackle that childhood wound today. I can't wait to see what's on the other side of this. Like, nobody lives like this. I live like this, but this is not the norm. The majority of people that I have told that I'm writing a book that I just run into in life, and I'm like, they're like, what is it about? I'm like, shadow work. They're like, what's that? Like, this is my mission to make this mainstream. But nobody goes towards this. Nobody wants to wake up and have this for breakfast. But you know what's worse? Living the next 10 years the same way that you lived the last, and not knowing why the same shit keeps happening, and spending thousands of dollars on therapy, if at all, and getting nowhere, and still feeling the same frustration, the same disconnection, the same wondering, like, who the fuck am I, and why am I doing this, and why does this happen? And then you get into that realm of, why is this happening to me? Woe is me. This is just my luck. This kind of thing always happens, and you get really pessimistic. You turn into this person that expects the worst instead of the best, and that is the beginning of the end. So if you're tired of the same patterns, if you're exhausted from running, if you want to actually understand yourself, let Chiron be your starting point, because it will blow you wide open in the best way. And it'll be painful at first, of course, but your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the wounded part of you that's been trying to protect you the only way it knows how. So you've created all of these coping mechanisms through life who have become ingrained in who you are. And when you run this report and you zoom out and you see yourself in this way, you start connecting all of these dots of like, oh, that's why I did that. That's why I dated them. That's why I took that job. That's why I never had that conversation. That's why I let myself get to this weight. That's why I don't wear the things that make me feel happy and I just try to fade into the distance. That's why I never put myself out there. Like, this is going to start helping you make so many connections so that you can work with it instead of against it. And that's when everything changes, because when you meet it, when you understand it, when you work with it, you come into so much love, because you're like, oh my God, hello. Like, that's why we did all of this stuff. That is why all of these things now make sense, because it has all been encoded with us from the beginning. The thing you're most afraid to look at is the thing that will set you free. And Carl Jung, while he may be controversial in his private life, his work changed our modern society. And he says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The thing that you are most afraid of looking at, going towards, admitting, is actually the point of liberation that you are trying to get from everywhere else. Your shadow is waiting for you to turn around and look at it, to accept it with all of the love in your heart, and to realize that there is nothing wrong with you. You're human. And being human means being messy. And being messy means that there is magic in between all of the messy bits. Because that is exactly what we are all experiencing, just no one talks about it. We post our highlight reel on social media. People ask us how we are, and we say, good, I'm fine, great, how are you? We automatically respond, a knee-jerk response, without even trying to share. I mean, if it's the person bagging your groceries or holding the door for you, like maybe you're not like, oh, actually, no, I'm not okay, and trauma dump on all of these terrible things that happen. But with your people, with your close family and friends, when they ask you how you are and you just say, I'm good, how are you? We're keeping ourselves away from connection, not only with ourselves by admitting out loud to another human that we are not okay and that that's okay, but from experiencing ourselves, from experiencing each other and allowing each other to be messy. If we're all just running around trying to be perfect, we are all going to fail all the time because no one's perfect. Perfect is a lie. It doesn't exist. There is no way that we could possibly be these perfect people. And so when we try to present as that, but we're really struggling on the inside to a point where we are very unwell, that is not what being a human and having beautiful relationships that we do means. Being a human means that you have a spectrum within you at all times for everything. A spectrum of emotions, a spectrum of sexuality, a spectrum of interests, a spectrum of desires, a spectrum of hobbies. We are allowed to change and evolve and to shift and to be two things at once. We are told by society that we have to pick one job, pick one career, pick one major at 18 when you don't know who the fuck you are and you've just come out of the indoctrination of high school and now you're supposed to plan the rest of your life and go to a very expensive college for it. Like, that's just not it. We are multifaceted, multidimensional, disco ball soul people. We are allowed to be so many different things. And we are allowed to carry so much within us that we can't put language to. And that is exactly what shadow work does. It puts language to everything that you've hidden that is too overwhelming, too confusing, too big, too heavy to actually look at and dive into. But that adds up. That creates friction. That creates gunk. It doesn't allow for the flow of energy and love and light and magic. It keeps us stuck and heavily weighted in the darkness on something that is always going to take and take and take until one day it collapses the entire building, aka our life, because we haven't looked at it, because we haven't admitted to ourselves that something is not okay. And we try to put on a smile and tell everyone that we're fine. So grab your free Chiron report, end the standoff with your shadow, and find out what's been running your life. And if you want the full roadmap, Wound to Wisdom is waiting for you. You'll see that after you take the report. It is all going to be in your inbox. You can download this report and keep it forever. I highly encourage you to do this because it is going to translate everything that you've been feeling, and let me know how this goes. I am so curious. I've shared this around in my circles and it's insane. I mean, it is like on your knees crying or mind explosion or just like eerily too accurate is the majority of the feedback that I've gotten for this. And I love that. I love hearing that, honestly. Because what are we doing if we're not pushing ourselves into the uncomfortable unknown? We're just staying where we think is right, but it's not. And it's not going to do anything for us to never push, to never change, to never have challenges. So I challenge you to run your free Chiron report and let me know what it brings up for you. Let me know your revelation, because this blew my mind and I knew that it had to go to the people. I'll see you next week. Love, light, and black holes. Thanks for diving into the void with me. If today lit something up in you or cracked something open, follow the show and leave a review so we can magnetize more shame slayers and shadow sparklers into this world. Want more? Step through the portal at lovelightandblackholes.com. That's where the wild magic lives. Until next time, dance with your darkness like it's your favorite song and watch the whole universe light up.